Instead of conflict and aggression, here's governance built on grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka. So we've got an interesting episode here. This is one of the first times that Jim and I are going to record a prediction. And this prediction is kind of, it's nuanced, but it's also kind of humorous to me in a way, Jim. And I don't want to step on too much of it here because I already know you're going to share your theory that conservatism doesn't exist. So I can't think of a better setup for this. So take it away.
Okay. So for context, so that people know as we go what it is that I'm doing here, I'm going to use a piece of jargon that's very important to me that I helped devise. And that is a term called the conflict machine.
Right. Got it.
I want to define it up front so everybody understands what it is so that as I can use it freely in this conversation. Okay?
Okay.
The conflict machine is a system to address social problems that divides members of society into warring parties where there must be losers. Over time, when I've explained this to people and it comes back to me, they'll say, well, there must be winners and losers. No. The only necessary requirement for the conflict machine is that somebody lose.
Right. Yeah, I saw you do a win-lose the other day, which was really brilliant.
We don't want happening here is people thinking that there are real winners in this system. We want them to recognize that there are losers. Someone is paying the price.
Conflict machine always needs a loser.
There has to be losers. And there's more losers than there are winners by necessity, if there are any winners at all. Losers are the important part.
I know we don't want to go down too many rabbit trails here, but you said societal problems. And I'd like to suggest that perhaps societal is not big enough because we're having conflict machine issues over things that do affect society, but the core issue is not societal. Does that make any sense?
Not quite. So let me explain why the word societal issues appears in there. There are social, actually, I think I said social problems that divide societies. So, because societies is the collection of individuals, and they're divided now inside that collection. They're taking out teams because they have a different view as to how to solve a problem. And so we're concerned about social problems. We're concerned about, and everybody shares these concerns. How are we going to educate the children? How are we going to care for the poor? How are we going to provide for the common defense? And on it goes. So it's never the case. It's never the case that people say, well, we don't care about those things at all. We just, it's all nihilism and it should all go to HE double toothpick. And that's the end of the story, right? Everybody wants to make education better. Everybody wants to make sure the poor are taken care of. Everybody wants to, as a general rule, everybody, you could be hyper precise with me, but don't split hairs. You get it. It doesn't matter whether you're right or left or something else. We all want those things. The way we're going to get there is the issue. And you could adopt a social ethic that says, I'm allowed to point guns at people and get them to do what I want, which is what politics essentially is. We use the term conflict machine in place of politics because it more accurately describes how politics works.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay.
This makes sense.
All right. Just remember, there have to be losers.
Thank you. So let's return to the Tea Party. And I sent tea bags to the White House too.
I spoke at Tea Party rallies and events. The largest crowd I ever spoke to was a Tea Party crowd. There were 4,000 people in it in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. But I did crowds of hundreds and dozens and even, double digits.
And nobody even shot at you.
No, it was great. And I enjoyed meeting those people at the time. And I think some good things happened. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about Rand Paul, who was elected on the Tea Party wave in 2010 to the U.S. Senate, and a lot more about Tom Massie in a moment. It's going to involve my prediction that I'm going to make. He came along 2 years later in 2012. And so at the time that I'm speaking, the reason I'm speaking to these rallies is I work at DownsizeDC. And people were interested in our Read the Bills Act, which said that every bill had to be read and a version of it had to be published online for the public to be able to see for at least 7 days before the final vote could be cast. That we couldn't rush through these large packages that nobody's seeing what's in them. And then without getting into too much detail, you can check out all of this at DownsizeDC.org, which we will put in the show notes. And then the One Subject at a Time Act, which has had multiple co-sponsors, been introduced by several different members of Congress over the years. Rand Paul has consistently introduced both of these bills in the Senate. That One Subject at a Time Act said that the bill had to have a clear, descriptive title that was limited to one topic, and the everything in the bill had to conform to that topic. So these large omnibus bills that cover lots of different territory, where they cram stuff in so that people can't see it in the dead of night.
Oh, like that big, beautiful bill that got passed?
Yes, we would. That kind of stuff would stop. That's, by the way, this happens every year in the history of Congress in our lifetimes. This is what they do, especially when they're about to go out on recess. So we had these, and we were invited to come speak to the Tea Party. So I was intimately familiar and could watch what was happening. And I've been intimately familiar and able to watch even people that I met in that era and how they've developed over time. Okay. And I followed the career very closely because I'm a fan of Rand Paul and Tom Massie. Okay. So let's go through a little bit of history here. And Bill, in the notes that I sent you, these items are numbered for a reason.
Yes.
Okay.
I love this. And people, by the way, we should put these notes in the description so you can just like follow along chapter and verse, because it's sort of incontrovertible.
We will also put together this outline. We'll put this outline in the notes so people can see these 10 events.
Okay, so 2009 to 2015.
Government was too big. That's what the Tea Party believed. In that era, across the board, and this included the wars, they were opposed to the entire size, scope, and power of the federal government. They were opposed to the bailouts. You remember the bailouts? They had just happened. The big financial crisis had happened. They said, no, we oppose these fat cat bailouts where we don't want them. There was a corollary group that started called Occupy, right?
Yep.
And the Occupy movement was on the left. They were opposed to the bailouts too. The Tea Party included one more thing. They were very, very opposed to the idea of passage of Obamacare. And when Obamacare got passed, they were interested in repealing it. I spoke to a group of Republicans in Missouri called the Pachyderm Club in 2012. The way I go about things, when I'm going to go give a speech, I'll be like, I need to say something they're not going to hear before, right? I'm not interested in giving the same speech everybody else gives. I'm not that guy. So I'm just like, I have to say something different here. And so I decided to pick on John Boehner, who was the Republican speaker at the time. And I expected negative feedback because I'm in a room full of people who are dedicated, devoted Republicans, so devoted they gather and have lunch together once a month. And they are active. They care, right? They loved me. And I was like, uh-oh, the Republican Party's in trouble.
In spite of Boehner.
In the Republican Party, these are people who are dissatisfied with it. And that was the impact the Tea Party was having up through 2015 when a man came down an escalator in the Trump Tower. And when that man came down the escalator, the second era of the Tea Party begins. That's the 2015 to 2020 phase where they're becoming MAGAfied. The big issues then, they were pro-free speech and anti-cancel culture. They were, in fact, I work with an organization called the Advocates for Self-Government, and one of the questions that's on the left, on the social side of the formula, is a question about free speech. We watched Democrats start to back off the notion of free speech, and we watched the numbers of Republicans who supported free speech go way up. These were the Tea Party Republicans. They suddenly cared a lot about free expression of ideas. They were very opposed to censorship and the cancel culture, which came extra hard for them starting in 2020 in particular. They also wanted us to stop being the world's policeman. And the candidate who got on that escalator, you may have heard of him, his name was Donald Trump. He said that he wanted to get us out of these wars, that we shouldn't be the world's policeman. And they really seriously glommed onto that and stayed stuck to that all the way through 2024. There's a third era. And that's from the 2020s to early 2025.
So where we are today, basically.
Yes. And the line that gets drawn here gets drawn roughly about March, maybe April. It's about the time that Elon Musk leaves the administration. So we're sitting here in December of 2025 as we're recording this. I don't know when we'll broadcast it, but we're recording this in December 25. And I'm saying to you that we are just 8-9 months after the end of this era.
Okay.
And three more things. The seventh on my list, they were opposed to the lockdowns, very much so in 2020. They were the most likely to be opposed to the lockdowns across the political spectrum. 2, they wanted to investigate Fauci and the lab leak. And they were the first to accept the premise of the lab leak. And they were right. And third, Epstein Island. They wanted the entire Epstein scandal unearthed, understood, comprehended. This was the end of the Tea Party. And now I come to number 10 and my prediction. Tom Massie has been repudiated very thoroughly by Donald Trump, and they're primarying him. And we're going to talk about the primary in a second. I want to break down his situation for you a tiny bit here. But I want to say that everything I just listed, these were all the good attributes that the Tea Party brought. There may be some other things that you can think of you didn't like, you didn't agree with, and you probably have my agreement too. But let's review them real quickly. Number one, they believed government was too big across the board. Number two, they opposed the bailouts. Number three, they wanted to stop and once it was in existence, they wanted to repeal Obamacare. Four, they were pro-free speech and anti-cancel culture. Five, they wanted us to stop being the world's policeman. Six, they want to end the lockdowns. There's 9 things, it turns out. I'm editing on the fly here. They want to end the lockdowns. 7, they wanted to investigate Fauci and the lab leak. And 8, they wanted the Epstein files revealed to the world, and they wanted the people involved in that scandal to be held to account. And this administration said no, 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 no to every one of those things. They have now run and fled from every one of those things. And the Tea Party members of Congress, like Massie and Paul, they want them gone too. And so here's what they're going to do. They're going to run a primary campaign against Tom Massie to try to unseat him, to remove him. Donald Trump is calling him the worst representative in Congress. And my prediction is that, and there will even be people in the sound of my voice right now, but there will be lots of people who, because of the propaganda that will come out, and I'm going to explain how this is going to work in just a moment, but because of the propaganda that will come out, they will turn on Tom Massie. They will betray him. They will dislike him. They will consider him part of the problem. If I wanted to sum all this up, I could say that there was a slogan that went like this: drain the swamp. And the way that the swamp is being drained is the 5D or 12D or 100D chess that's allegedly being played right now is to fill the swamp first. In order to drain a swamp, you have to fill it. And if you come along and say, wait a minute, wasn't it our job to drain the swamp? The answer is no, you're part of the problem. I'm busy filling it over here. I know what I'm doing. I'm 15 steps ahead of you. And this is idiocy, but is completely predictable because time makes more converts than reason, because repetition matters, because if you keep throwing enough stuff, you know what I'm talking about, it's brown, against a wall, some of it's going to stick. And it's going to stick in the minds of people, and they're going to decide Tom Massie is part of the problem. He's a bad guy. And frankly, they've repudiated all of this.
So where does that leave us now?
Where does that leave conservatism?
Yeah, I mean, if Massie is gone, what's the impact? Well, some people in Washington get to say, "Oh yeah, we did that," right?
Well, one person gets to say he did that. I don't. Is it really? Is one libertarian member out of 435 asking too much? If we had proportional representation, there would be several dozen of them.
Oh, sure. Well, you already mentioned how Occupy was similar in some ways to the original Tea Party. We had red, blue, and purple back then. Why not?
Yeah. So my prediction has to do with a longstanding belief. This is something I've been proclaiming for 15 or 16 years, that conservatism isn't a philosophy. It's not a real thing. It doesn't exist. So all the things I just listed, and we'll put them in the show notes, all 9 things. I thought I originally had 10, but all 9 things, all of them, they're walking away. And Massie's the last step. And it's all proof it doesn't exist. So I came up with this idea because in 1996, my conversion to libertarianism had to do with the fact that I was attracted to principle. And Bob Dole ended up being the nominee for the Republican Party. Now, for those of you who are too young, just a couple of years before, Newt Gingrich had led the Republicans to take back the House for his party. And the significance of that moment was that for 40 consecutive years, 20 consecutive elections, going all the way back into the 1940s, the Democrats had controlled the House uninterrupted. For the Republicans to take back the House, they'd done the Senate a few times, but to take back the House was an extraordinary thing, virtually seemingly impossible as recently as just 2 years before that. And in 1994, they offered something called the Contract with America, where they promised to do some things, like reduce the size of the government, cut a couple government agencies. There was some good material in there. Not all of it was great, but there was some good stuff. And it was exciting that they were actually making real promises to make real changes and that they were serious about it. They were making a contract to bring these things up to a vote in the first 100 days of the administration. Well, in true seizing defeat from the jaws of victory fashion, they nominated Bob Dole, who didn't agree with it, didn't want the Tea Party. They nominated the guy who was next. It was his turn. Bob's a funny guy, but he was kind of dull and boring, and he was very much an insider. He was the majority leader of the Senate. He knew inside baseball. And that summer, I had witnessed him give a speech as he stepped out of the Senate and said, I'm going to be committing full time to my presidential run. And as he said goodbye to the Senate with tears streaming down his cheeks, because the Senate meant so much to him, he said, my greatest accomplishment was saving Social Security. Now, this was odd to me as a young conservative Republican, because this man was elected in the 1960s to the House, fighting Medicare and Medicaid. He fought Johnson's Great Society. He campaigned against it. And then he got elected and served. And here he is, full circle, 30 years later, standing in the well of this body saying his greatest accomplishment was saving the largest social welfare program we had at the time. Whatever you think of Social Security, that's not the point. The point is that what a conservative exists to do, please hear me, what a conservative exists to do is to backfill, reinforce, and establish whatever it is the progressives succeeded in getting past in a previous generation. Now, in the previous generation, for him, we're talking about stuff that was 30 and 50 years old. Okay. But for modern Republicans, you can see that they're willing to give this stuff up a lot faster. We went through 3 time frames here, 2019 to 2015. Is 2015 ancient history? Then we went to 2015 to 2020. Is 2015 to 2020 ancient history? And how about the fact that I can point to stuff that was true in January and February of the year that we're sitting in now, December of 2025, as we're recording this? How about the fact that I can point to that and I can say, they've already flipped on 3 things. They've already flipped on something very important here. None of the things are being delivered on, but you're just supposed to wait. You're just supposed to be silent. You're supposed to go along with it. What do you want, the progressives, the liberals to run the country? And these were good things to seek. And I'm arguing that the conservatives loathe themselves. They loathe the things that they say they care about today. They're very temporary. They're very fear-based. They're very reactionary. And I'm not the first person to observe the fact that they're essentially their philosophy is reaction and fear. There's a lot of people that have done this. There's whole books have been written about it. But in practice, I just gave you a set of evidence of what they do, Bill.
You know, I've been watching this for quite some time because conservatism is kind of a pushback. And since that moment with the contract with America and when the House flipped Republican for the first time in 40 years, since that moment, the Republicans haven't done anything with it. No. Except make things worse.
No. And so there was a moment where they had captured House, Senate, and the White House.
They had all 3.
Done something about Obamacare, just to pick an example.
Yep.
Which in 2012, as I just talked about, was the biggest issue at the time. Yep. So this was 2017. 5 years.
Nothing.
They did almost nothing. They did one very important thing. They ended the mandate penalty.
Yeah, for Obamacare.
Okay. I mean, that's like clipping the nails off the dog.
Well, has conservatism actually ever existed? Or is it just the resistance?
No, I mean, there's books. Like you can go buy Russell Kirk's book and you can read about it, or you can get Barry Goldwater's book and read about, whatever. But no, the answer is no. No. William F. Buckley, Mr. Conservative himself, said that conservatives are persons who stand athwart history and yell, stop.
Yes.
And that's all they really are at the end of the day. They don't actually believe in any type of progress. They don't believe in learning. They don't believe in expanding freedom. They don't even really care about the individual. And this has been a process of enlightenment for me that I've had to go through and figure this out the hard way because I was raised conservative. And so I had a soft spot for this.
Me too.
But the truth of the matter is it's not real. Because I can show you all these things and they don't care about them anymore. They were completely exercised about them. They abandoned the field. And the things they care about now, they actually want a strong military presence on the streets, something they never would have tolerated from a Democrat. They actually, a military presence on the streets. They want their president to go out and murder people. Because they're the bad people. They want that. That's what they want. And it shows what they really cared about the most all along. They don't really value small government. They don't really value the individual. That's not who they are. That was all lip service. They didn't mean it. So how did we get here? What is it that actually causes this? Because they're not unique or special. There's something very much about the human condition that is actually happening here. So the conflict machine is that system to address social problems that divides members of societies into warring parties where there must be losers. The warring parties are gangs. They're gangs. I want you to imagine that you're stuck in a prison for just a moment. And you have a choice for your own safety and security to join one of two abhorrent gangs. You would never do this in the outside for any reason, but you know that you need to be able to sleep at night and you want to protect your body and your life. And so you make an unfortunate decision to join one side or the other. If you did something like that, we could at least say you had a justifiable reason to join a hate group inside prison. But we're not in prison, and yet everybody's acting like it. The stakes in our political game get elevated higher and higher and higher, and we spend less and less time understanding and talking and getting to know one another. We spend more and more time getting angrier and angrier, and it brings us onto the cusp, if not actual violence against one another, because the stakes are so high.
We're seeing that right now.
Gang must win. We must defeat the other gang. It is existential. It is existential to us. So let's go to Tom Massie for a second. Tom Massie is going to be the subject of a SuperPAC attack. 3 significant donors, all of whom do not like his position on Israel because he is not an endorser of the war. He's not anti-Jew. He's not anti-Semitic. He has questioned U.S. foreign policy and U.S. foreign policy commitments. And because he does not want to go along with the show, he is public enemy number 1. And they're going to primary him. These 3 pro-Zionist donors. They're going to spend, as best as I understand it right now, something in the neighborhood of $18 million. So I just want to put this in context. This is 1 out of 435 districts. Massie's district is in Kentucky. The real spending will occur starting at the beginning of the year after the holidays are over, and it will relentlessly continue until May 19th, which is the primary election day. So for 5 and just over a half months, just over 5.5 months, he is going to have a relentless barrage of attacks. Some of this will be picked up in the media, in the talk shows, on Fox News. It will continue to go out and out and out as they set out to defeat him. They already have an opponent lined up. The SuperPAC money will be spent to destroy his reputation, destroy him in anything that they could possibly come up, even if they've got to invent it and make it up. And in fact, there may be a May surprise that's worse than all the other things that they say from January to April. Right before the primary is over, a week or 2 out, something even worse might drop down. And my prediction is that because of this prison gang mentality, because people are sucked into this existential conflict machine thinking they have to win, they have to defeat the libs, so to speak, that there will be people who were once in the Tea Party who will betray him. And it won't be a small number. It'll be a lot of people. It'll be a lot of people. And if he loses, it will 100% be because those people are betrayers. They didn't believe that government was too big. They weren't really opposed to the bailouts. They didn't want to repeal Obamacare. They weren't pro-free speech. They didn't care about the fact that our military's all over the world playing policeman. They've forgotten about the lockdowns. That's yesterday's news. They don't really care about Epstein anymore, and they don't want to investigate Fauci lab leak. Why are you living in the past? Right now, the thing we need to do is we need to get this guy out of here because gosh, we can't have one single tiny voice in questioning or reminding us of what our principles are. In fact, I'm going to go one step further because if I haven't offended the people who are going to do this enough yet, I need to say something more so I ensure that I do. Plato had something called the allegory of the cave. Are you familiar with this?
Oh, sure. Yeah. This is great.
The premise of it basically is that a group of people are prisoners their whole lives and they're facing a wall. And they're in the bottom of the cave facing a wall. At the top of the cave, there's a light source. So that means shadows can pass the front of the cave. And they see the shapes on the wall. They see the shadows on the wall. And they talk amongst each other as they're staring at the wall, wondering what these shapes are and trying to add meaning and stuff to it. And one day, one of the prisoners escapes. He goes up the tunnel. He gets out of the cave. He's out in the open. He begins to see what the world really looks like. It's amazing. It's nothing like what they thought that it looked like when they were merely seeing the shadows on the wall. So he goes on a rescue mission. He goes back in. And it turns out that just by hearing the story, if they will accept the story, there's a way out. They can go and they can experience what happens up in the real world. And he begins telling them about it. And they don't believe him. What's worse, they hate him and want to kill him. They want to murder him. We have a parallel story from the Old Testament. We understand this, and Jesus himself spoke to it. He said that they stone the prophets. That's what happens. So when someone comes and tells the people the truth that there is no such thing as conservatism, and I'm laying out the evidence for it, the response isn't to go, oh, you know what? You're right. We have to learn something. It's to come back and say, you must be destroyed. And that's why Tom Massie must be destroyed. Now, I believe if they manage to defeat Tom Massie, he's going to come back stronger than ever. He's going to be even more powerful and more significant. But my bet, if I were placing it right now, is that he will manage to win his primary. They primaried him with a couple $1 million a few years ago, or 2 years ago, and he got the best margin ever. So we'll see what happens. I think there will be backlash to this. Maybe not everybody will betray. Maybe they will prove me wrong and show that there are people who actually have something called conservative principles. But right now, I'm suspicious, Bill. A lot of people that said that they had them certainly didn't.
They walked away from all 9 of the ones that we've mentioned here.
Yes. And they're going to oppose Massie to cap it off. Okay? I have 2 solutions to this problem before we go real quick. One, we can get out of the conflict machine with empathy. We need to have grace. We need to be able to talk to one another. We've talked about this over and over again. We've talked about getting on the porch with your lemonade and talking to people with whom you disagree, finding out what they really believe and understanding them and being in a sharing mutual discussion. And we don't have enough of that happening right now.
Didn't happen in Plato's cave, isn't happening now.
Exactly. And second, I advocate for something called the philosophy of human respect, which is at any time someone has their happiness, harmony, or prosperity will be diminished every time when they experience theft or violence. Every time that's what's going to happen to them. So we could stop this entire prison dilemma by getting rid of the conflict machine. And we could get rid of the conflict machine if we practice human respect and got rid of the state. The fact that we're fighting over Tom Massie gets to the root of a very serious problem. We shouldn't be making so many decisions that are being decided at our state capitals, let alone all the way in distant Washington, D.C. And so I advocate for human respect, and I advocate that the Tea Party start to care about values that look much more like individual human respect.